Hello, everyone. This is Mrs. Kleins here. Let's get started with learning about the properties of water in our second biochemistry unit video notes. We can thank Democritus, a Greek philosopher who lived from 460 BCE to 370 BCE, for being the first individual to coin the word atom and suggest that an atom was the smallest unit of matter. Unfortunately, many philosophers at the time, including Aristotle, believed all matter was composed of four classical elements: earth, wind, fire, and water. This particular atomic theory was widely accepted for 2,000 years. Poor Democritus, right? And it was not until the 1800s that further developments on the atomic theory came to light and provided a foundation for what we know about atoms today. Matter is anything that has mass and takes up space. An atom is the simplest form of matter, really considered a building block of matter, and individual atoms work to build larger components of matter like water, glucose, which is an important energy source for living things, and even us, humans. An atom itself is defined as the smallest component of an element that retains or keeps the properties of that particular element. And all atoms, made up of different elements, have different physical and chemical properties, but more to come on that later. Atoms themselves are composed of three subatomic particles that determine each atom's properties. First, the proton is a positively charged subatomic particle found in the nucleus or center of the atom. The number of protons an atom has determines the element itself and therefore coincides to the atomic number on the periodic table. Second, a subatomic particle known as a neutron, and it is aptly named neutron because it is a neutral particle, acting like a buffer to help stabilize the nucleus where it exists alongside protons. The number of neutrons determines how stable or unstable the atom is. Lastly, electrons are subatomic particles that are negatively charged. Electrons exist in specific orbitals surrounding the nucleus of an atom. It is the number of electrons that will determine whether or not the atom is positively or negatively charged or neutral. As you can see from the animation of helium on your right, that the electrons are in blue orbit around the nucleus, which is comprised of protons in green and neutrons in red. One water molecule is made up of three atoms: one oxygen atom and two hydrogen atoms. Oxygen really wants to bond with hydrogen because it is so electronegative and therefore really wants to complete its valence shell, or outer shell of electrons. Therefore, because the oxygen atom wants the electrons from the two hydrogen atoms more, the electrons become unequally shared and oxygen pulls on hydrogen's electrons, creating the characteristic bent shape of a water molecule. This results in oxygen becoming slightly negative and hydrogen becoming slightly positive. Inside one water molecule are two covalent bonds. Covalent bonds occur when one or more valence electron from one atom is shared with another atom. This type of bond occurs between nonmetals, like hydrogen and oxygen. The reason the valence electrons are shared in a covalent bond is because both of the atoms involved in the covalent bond want to have full valence shells. By sharing electrons via a covalent bond, all the elements in the compound can take advantage of having a full valence shell. After all, their entire goal is to fulfill just that. Now let's look at an example. In the example on your screen, you see that there is one carbon atom and four hydrogen atoms. Carbon has four valence electrons, represented by blue dots. Carbon needs four more electrons to have a full valence shell. Hydrogen has one valence electron each, represented by the red dots, and needs one more to complete its valence shell because hydrogen's electrons are still in the first shell, which can only hold two electrons. If the hydrogen atoms and the carbon atom share their valence electrons, Then carbon will receive the 4 more valence electrons it needs to have a full outer shell, and each hydrogen atom will receive the 1 valence electron it needs to have full outer shells as well. Thus, we actually have 4 covalent bonds here, one between the carbon atom and each hydrogen atom it is sharing electrons with. The covalent bond creates the compound CH4, or methane, which is a greenhouse gas causing climate change. Now let's look at a water molecule. In the image provided, you can see how the valence shell of each atom, 1 oxygen and 2 hydrogen, shares the electrons from hydrogen and thus creating a covalent bond. Due to the unequal sharing of electrons created inside a water molecule, where the oxygen is slightly negative and the hydrogen atoms are slightly positive, weak interactions are created when one water bonds to other water molecules. These attractions create a chemical bond known as hydrogen bonds. Hydrogen bonds are established between a hydrogen atom with a partial positive charge and a more electronegative atom, such as oxygen. Electronegativity refers to an atom's ability to attract another electron pair, like oxygen's ability to attract 2 hydrogen atoms. Some atoms on the periodic table are more electronegative than others. As you can see from the image in the lower right of your screen, that hydrogen bonds connect one water molecule to another water molecule, where the slightly positive hydrogen is connected to the slightly negative oxygen of a different water molecule. This helps to build water's ionic structure. Our first property of water is that water is polar. As stated previously, inside one water molecule are 2 covalent bonds, and many covalent bonds do not share their electrons equally, like water. This unequal sharing of electrons causes one side of the molecule to become slightly negative and the other side to become slightly positive. Therefore, a polar molecule is created because oxygen hogs the electrons more. Another important point is that polar molecules, like water, only like other polar molecules. For example, food coloring and water mix together because they are both polar molecules. Food coloring is what we would call hydrophilic or water-loving because it is also a polar molecule exhibiting polar covalent bonds. However, oil, which is a non-polar substance, is a hydrophobic substance, meaning it's afraid of water, and that is because it is nonpolar. Therefore, oil resists mixing with water when the two are in the same container. The polarity of water actually helps it to bond to itself. The ability of a molecule to stick to another molecule of the same kind is known as cohesion. So when water sticks to other water molecules via hydrogen bonding, cohesion takes place. For example, when water droplets stick to themselves when it rains, cohesion takes place. Besides the polarity of water helping it bond to itself via hydrogen bonds, that same polarity helps it to bond to other molecules via hydrogen bonding as well. When water bonds or sticks to another molecule that is not water, adhesion takes place. Examples of adhesion include the morning dew sticking to grass and water mixing with the salt to form salt water. Salt is also a polar molecule. Cohesion of molecules at the surface of a liquid is called surface tension. On the surface, these cohesive forces create a skin that needs to be broken. For example, a water strider insect does not break the surface tension, meaning the insect is not able to break the hydrogen bonds that hold one water molecule to another water molecule. Whereas, when you do a belly flop, the surface tension is broken by you breaking the hydrogen bonds upon hitting the water. Capillary action is a unique property of water because it utilizes cohesion, adhesion, and surface tension to help move a liquid upward. Capillary action is the exact tool that plants utilize to move water up their vascular system, and the same technique is applied in medical offices to collect a sample of your blood when the nurse or doctor pricks your finger. The way capillary action works is that the molecules stick to the walls via adhesion, stick to themselves via cohesion, and surface tension helps to hold all intact so it can continue to move upward. Water is also known as the universal solvent. That is because water, being polar, dissolves polar substances. Water is considered to be the solvent because it does the dissolving. The solute is the item that is being dissolved. For example, if you were making Kool-Aid, water is the solvent because it will dissolve the mixture from the packet. And the Kool-Aid packet is the solute, the item that is getting dissolved when you stir it all together. Another property of water is that it resists temperature change, which is actually quite important because this is how your cells help to maintain homeostasis. Remember, you are made up of 60% water. Because of water's high specific heat, the cells in your body do not change temperature rapidly. This is the same reason why lakes and rivers do not boil when it's really hot outside. The last property of water is its ability to expand when it is frozen. The crystalline structure that is created allows water to become less dense as a solid than a liquid. This is why water floats. The last property of water is its ability to expand when it is frozen. The crystalline structure that is created allows water to become less dense as a solid than a liquid. This is why ice floats. It is because of the hollow spaces in the ice that make water less dense and allow it to float. If ice did not float, ponds, lakes, and parts of the ocean would freeze from the bottom up. This would cause major issues for biodiversity on our planet. All right, everyone, we are done with this section of your video notes. Be sure to ask questions if you have them and take the time to look over your notes.